Welcome to Navigating Estate Planning with Caress Law. I'm your host today, Tammi Caress, founder of Caress Law. In today's episode, we're diving into a term that often confuses many when creating their estate plan. And that word is estate. What is it? It's a simple word, but understanding its true meaning is essential for securing your legacy and protecting your loved ones. Join me as we demystify the word estate in terms of your estate plan and explore its importance in securing your future. And now it's time for the disclaimer. The information contained in this podcast and associated material is intended to furnish listeners and users with general information on matters that they may find to be of interest. The information in this podcast provided by Caress Law and its agents are for general guidance and is not intended to replace or serve as a substitute for any advisory, tax, estate planning, or other professional or legal advice, consultation, or service. Sometimes we may reference third-party materials or websites. Such links or references are only for the convenience of the listener, user, or browser. Caress Law and its agents do not recommend or endorse the content of third-party information or sites. You should consult with appropriate Caress Law professionals or other professional advisors for advice concerning specific tax, estate planning, or other matters before making any decision. In summary, this podcast is not legal advice. If you need legal advice or before acting or making any decision with anything talked about in the podcast, seek the counsel of an attorney. Thanks so much. What is an estate? So many people think that in order to have an estate, you have to have a certain amount of money. When in reality, just about everybody has an estate. It might be a smaller estate or it could be a larger estate, but nonetheless, most people have an estate. An estate, just to put it simply, are your assets. It's what you own. It is a car that you drive. It's a bank account you have. It is an IRA that you contribute to. It is a house that you own. Even if you have a mortgage on it, still considered an asset. It could be the stuff inside your home. It is everything you own. One of the things that we have to go over when a person is creating their estate plan are their assets. And essentially, I'm asking them to provide me their estate. And the reason it's so important and the reason we need to know every little detail is depending on what your goals are, will really help us determine what's the best instrument for you to accomplish those goals. And when I say instrument, I'm really talking about a will or a trust, oftentimes. Now, today's episode is not about or is not going to go into wills and trusts. However, you can go back to my prior episodes and learn a whole lot about them. But today, I just want to talk about the importance of what an estate is in terms of your estate plan, so that you can hopefully use these tools to think about your assets, how they might be owned and titled, and what you may need to do to ensure they pass out to your loved ones once you're gone. An estate essentially is everything. Everything includes what I call cash equivalent accounts. These are your checking, savings, money market, certificates of deposits like CDs. Those kind of accounts that are very liquid accounts are cash equivalent accounts. So if you have $1 in the bank, or if you have $2 million in the bank, either way, that's part of your estate. The other is stocks and bonds. Stocks, you might have an account at a Schwab or a Fidelity or your local bank. Sometimes I think they have some sort of stock accounts. Nonetheless, these are assets that you are holding. It might mean that you're holding these assets because you inherit it from grandma or something like that, and you have these old stocks that are just sitting there. That's fine, but that is a part of your estate. Business interest. So if you have a limited liability company, many people open up these companies when they may have retired and they're going into consulting. And so they need a business to do that work. And they open up an LLC. that is included and a part of your estate. Many people also have LLCs for, say, they have a rental property, and the rental property is owned by the LLC for liability protection. Again, that company and its assets is part of an estate. Life insurance is also part of your estate. So if you own a life insurance policy, even if it's on someone else's life, typically it's on your own, but you might own it for someone else, that life insurance policy is part of your estate. Retirement accounts or beneficiary accounts are another way to put it. Those assets are part of your estate. When I say retirement accounts, I'm talking about an IRA, 401k, 403b, those types of plans that you contribute to typically through an employer when it's a 401k or basically anything other than an IRA, that you usually can't take money out until you've reached age 59, or I should say you can't take it out without penalty until you reach age 59. And then you have your real property. Real property is like your home. It's the vacant land you might own on the coast. It's your second home. It's a rental property. Those are estate assets. Now, the reason why these assets and to learn about these assets are so important in your estate planning is because different assets at your death will pass differently than another asset. And it all just depends on how that asset is titled. And it depends on whether that asset has a beneficiary on it. So, for example, your IRA, if you have an IRA, you usually name a beneficiary of your IRA, and that beneficiary will inherit your IRA at death. It doesn't matter what your will says. And if you have a trust, it doesn't matter what your trust says, all because if there is a beneficiary on that IRA, then the beneficiary trumps all else. And that is true for even cash equivalent accounts. Oftentimes you can name it's called a pay on death beneficiary. If there is a pay on death beneficiary at death, that account is going to go to that pay on death beneficiary. Doesn't matter what your will says, doesn't matter what your trust says. Okay? Same thing with any accounts that you have with stocks and bonds. You may also, as part of your estate, own, say, I'm just going to use an account, like a financial account, with another person. This is a joint account. And at death, the surviving joint owner will end up owning that account. It's called by operation of law. Again, doesn't matter what your will says, doesn't matter what your trust says. That account is going to go to the surviving joint owner at death just because it's titled in that way. So, as you can see, when we're talking about an estate, this is why I want, as an estate planning attorney, all of the detail, because many people think if they create a will, that the will control everything and they're done and good to go. Well, the will only controls what we call probate assets. Now, there is also another term or kind of a subcategory of an estate that we call a probate estate. A probate estate is an estate for probate assets. Probate assets are governed by your will. So, what's a probate asset? It is an asset that is not jointly owned and does not have a beneficiary designated on it. An example might be you own your house. Maybe you're single, you own your house, only your name's on that deed. That is an asset, a part of your overall estate, but a subcategory is it is a probate asset governed by your will. So what that means when a person passes away, again, we want to know what is their estate. We want to know everything in their estate. Then we want to know, did they own any of these assets with somebody else? Then we want to know, is there a beneficiary on this particular asset, such as an IRA? Those questions are important because that's what tells us the process that we need to go through to get that asset out to the beneficiary upon death. So when we're talking about a probate estate, it could be real property. It can be cash equivalent accounts. It can be stocks and bonds. It can be business interests. It can be even life insurance and retirement accounts. That is because that asset has no beneficiary tied to it via a financial account, and it's not jointly owned. Now, if any one of those assets are jointly owned, again, not a probate asset and not a part of a probate estate. I hope this is making sense. Another word that we use, or kind of a subcategory for estate, is the trust estate. And simply put, when you create a trust, the assets owned by the trust is part of the trust estate. That could be real property again, cash equivalent accounts, stocks and bonds, automobiles, boats, household items, business interests, even life insurance. Those assets can be in a trust estate. How do we know? It's because the title of those assets are titled to the trust. So, big picture, we have your estate. Doesn't matter if it's a probate estate or a trust estate. Those are all within the bubble, if you will, of the estate. An estate is essentially everything that you own. Everything you own. When we're filing estate tax returns, which is a tax assessed at death, and Oregon and Washington have their own state estate tax returns. Many states have their own, but I practice in Oregon and Washington, so I talk about those. We have to total value your entire estate to determine if you are required to file that estate tax return. In Oregon, if we total up your real property, your probate assets, your revocable trust assets, which again includes stocks, bonds, houses, boats, automobiles, life insurance, business interest, financial accounts. We total all those up and it's over $1 million in the state of Oregon. We are filing an estate tax return and possibly owe estate taxes. And in the state of Washington, it's 2.192. It's just barely under $2.2 million. So if the total estate value is over that roughly $2.2 million, then in Washington, a Washington resident or a person who owns real property in Washington will be subject to the estate tax. Now, when we are going through your estate plan, oftentimes we are looking at, well, all the time, I'm looking at the assets that you own. We're determining whether you want a trust or need a trust, whether a will is sufficient. And then we are going to ensure that your assets are titled appropriately and possibly have beneficiary designations on them that will follow your plan out at death pursuant to your wishes. That is why it's really important to know what an estate is. Some resources to go back. I actually have an on-demand class called the 7 Truths and Untruths of Estate Planning. It really does go through what an estate is and the titling of assets. And that's a really nice one to go back and listen to. And of course, I have a few other podcasts that you can listen to as well. But I hope that helps. So anytime you're going to go into your estate planning lawyer's office, I highly recommend that you have a completed asset list, meaning everything that you own, how that asset is currently titled, and the beneficiaries on those accounts, if you have any. because that's going to help us create and develop the best plan for you. I hope this was helpful for you. I'm going to go ahead and put a few items in the show notes so that you can go back and possibly listen to some of the on-demand webinars that we have. If you go and join me at my website, which is caresslaw.estate, all one word, you'll find many resources. We have lots of on-demand workshops that you can participate in, and we also have live webinars as well. So hope this was helpful and look forward to talking with you again.